Silver Fox Entertainment, in conjunction with Winsome Source Media and Focus Media, proudly presents S.H.I.N.E Live, the podcast that focuses on supporting, honoring, inspiring, nurturing, elevating, and educating women everywhere. With your S.H.I.N.E Live co-hosts, educator, performing artist, and influencer Sharon Cook, and CEO, entrepreneur, and personal fitness trainer Don Cole. This podcast is designed to build a community of sisterhood through dialogue that is transparent, authentic, and informative. And now, your host of S.H.I.N.E Live, Sharon and Dawn.
Hey, Sharon.
Hey, Donnie Dawn. How are you?
How are you?
I have company.
Okay. You have, well, it's okay. I think someone wants to talk.
I know. This is what happens when you go live, right?
I know, right?
I mean, like anything goes. I was just looking at the introduction too, and I was like, oh shucks, I need to take have some pictures taken because my whole look has changed.
I know, girl.
Since last year,
short and sassy.
Yeah. Well, welcome all of our viewers, giving people a chance to come on into the sunroom.
Yes.
So they can shine.
They can shine because we don't have shade here. There's no shade room. We are in the sunroom.
Yes. Nothing but lights.
Let your light shine.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm excited to talk about today's subject because this is even though it has a dark cloud sometimes, it can put one, or people can put one, but we're going to at least have start a dialogue to bring some light to this controversial issue. It doesn't have to be, but it always is.
Right. Right. Because it seems like it's too conflicting or too, I don't know, like they juxtapose one another. This whole idea of sex and faith, people tend to see them as two polar opposites, if you will. One is like, and the other is
right.
Talk about that. And so what we want our viewers to understand too, before we really delve into this hot topic of sex and faith, is that we do not consider ourselves to be the experts,
the
top gurus on the subject. We are just sharing our insight based on our own personal experiences, our own educational pursuits and research, and our perspectives that are based on also our experiences as well. And we wanted to make sure that we created an atmosphere here that would be safe, where we could come together, where women, anybody, but particularly women, could come together to understand and respond to the challenges facing them as sexual beings, because we are sexual.
Because we are. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. You know, when you were talking about it, I was thinking about how sex is something that is around us. It's everywhere. We can't avoid it. It's either in commercials or everywhere we turn, there's something that can be, I mean, unfortunately, sometimes even sexualized, but we're around it all the time. But when it comes to the church and those of faith that to really talk about issues, maybe even just questions, wanting to learn more, wanting to grow more, or have some concerns, have some issues, it's not addressed. And so a lot goes unanswered. And I have to be honest, when I would think about it, it was like, well, you can't explore if you're married and you're having sex and and you're in the church. It's better to be in the world where there's more. And we're not talking about something crazy, but it's just that it just almost made it appear very limited and what was appropriate even in the marriage with sex.
Right.
So So I'm glad that we're talking about it.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I want to hear for some other people too, just what their thoughts or what their experiences are, what their concerns or questions or whatever. So I hope that this really creates a great dialogue.
Let's talk about sex, baby. Uh, 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 okay.
Yo, I don't think we should
Okay.
talk about this. Come on, why not? People might
So the
misunderstand what we're trying to say, you know?
some terminology, some definitions here out of the way, because we want to be clear about what we are talking about.
Yeah.
And so one of the definitions I wanted to clarify is the definition of the word sex. When we're talking about sex here, we're not talking about in terms of um, your physiological being, like male, female, but we are talking specifically about engaging in sexual relationships or sexual intercourse. When we talk about the word sexuality, um, sexuality we know can take on the definition of being a sexual orientation. We kind of sometimes we you know um, talk about sexual orientation when we're talking about sexuality, but in this case we want to talk about a person's behaviors or their desires or attitudes that relate to sex and physical intimacy.
Yeah.
Okay. And then finally, when we talk about faith, we are not talking about faith in terms of if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you can move mountains, but we're talking about your belief in God or in the doctrine of a religion or your code of ethics and your standards of merit. And we know that there are many different faiths that are exercised out there, but specifically, Dawn and I are, we identify as Christians, or we espouse to the faith of Christianity. We believe in one Lord, one faith, one baptism, Jesus Christ, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. So, but we are not here to bash or put down or whatever any other faiths that are opposite from what we believe. But we think that this topic does apply in many instances to many different faiths. It can be a taboo subject or a hush hush subject if you're Christian, if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, whatever your faith is. A lot of times we don't want to talk about the topic of sex, and because we find it to be quite difficult, if you will.
Yeah.
And we connect it with this whole thing of immorality. But like we said in the beginning, that, God created it, and everything that God created is good,
That's
right?
right.
It's good. Yeah. So, and what he created was good and perfect. And so when we're looking at it from more of a faith standpoint, or I'm just going to say my own experiences from a biblical perspective, we can say that sex and sexuality were created to express mutuality and love, and to enhance the human experience. That's some enhancing, right?
Yep.
When you one with the other, that's enhancing the experience, the human
Yeah.
experience.
Yes.
Also, we can look at it in terms of to express love and commitment, and delight and pleasure, and to bring new life into the world and to give God glory. Yeah. I know some people like, what? You give God glory with that? Well, yeah, because remember, what he made is good.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. That is there's no denying that God made sex to be good. Now this is what's interesting too, is because it depends, it's a person's introduction to sex.
Okay.
Their awakening determines their mindset and their thought about it. Whether it's if it's been awakened before its time, then they got to go through all this unraveling and healing to really have learn if it's right. And this is why I will say, just even being a part of leadership and pastoring in the past, is we have not, as a church, as a full body, the Christian church, just where I've been a part of,
Right.
has not done a good job at really teaching the liberties and the freedoms and just the truth behind it, that it doesn't become embarrassing. Because I've been in couples retreats and they'll talk about sex and it's like they're giggling and embarrassed, and it's like, why? We're all here as married couples. Why are we still acting as if it's like you're embarrassed to talk about it? We don't, it's like, don't overshare. You put that, we don't have to overshare, but there are just as much as important with finances, with money, that you learn all the things, the traps, all the things, the liberties, so that you can have financial freedom. That should be the same way.
Right. I agree.
So that's my
Yeah.
little to the, church. Do
Yeah.
better. Let's do better.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
started here. Okay.
And so, let's talk about then really quickly here, like how it becomes then distorted. How does sex and sexuality become distorted? I know that um, one of the things that in my own personal experiences and in some things that I researched, um, I know that sexuality becomes distorted by unethical behaviors,
Mhm.
or attitudes or systems, if you will, that foster violence or exploitation, or infidelity, or the assertion of power. Hello? Because sometimes some of those things that happen, like in the case of rape or incest, it's about this whole thing of dominance and power,
Mhm.
or in the treatment of human beings as objects. So that's when it gets distorted. What God made is good, but then here comes, as uh, the old folks used to say, old slewfoot comes and distorts with those various types of unethical behaviors, um, and exploiting individuals and in using people and violating individuals and that sort of thing. So yeah.
So what is okay? So if God made it good, I'm gonna pose this question to you. If God made sex good, why?
And to our viewers
To our
or
viewers.
listeners, yeah. Go
But I'm
ahead.
gonna pose this question, and Sharon, you can either you jump in, and if you viewers out there, um, if you want to jump in, either comment or join the conversation and jump into the sunroom with us and talk with us as I'm asking this question, because this is what people are thinking. Okay, I'm in love with somebody. I'm in love. If God made sex good, and if we are in love with each other, how come he does not he does not approve of
Sex outside
sex
of marriage.
outside of marriage?
Ah.
Why is it, if it's love, how come I can't have that liberty as a single person? I'm not single, but as a single person, how come I can't?
If it isn't love, why does it feel? Why
Okay,
does it?
we can't help it. We're singers, so we can't help but bring music every time we have every time we think of something. So what is that? What do you think? What would you say, Sharon?
I think it's about maintain. I think for one, there. I remember having this conversation with my daughter, um, about the um, what happens, what the things that open up when you allow yourself to become intimate in that way, um, outside of a married marriage commitment. You just there's just so much you open yourself up to. There's so much the the possibility of just being hurt, and because is the relationship strong enough to withstand, is the other person totally committed and um, in there for the long haul, if you will. Have you
Mhm.
made this vow to one another of
Mhm.
love and honor, respect, um,
Mhm.
and sickness and health and all of that kind of stuff, that we say when we make that covenant, when we make those covenant vows um, to one another. And yeah, people do end up, there are situations where people are married and they end up breaking that covenant
Mhm.
and that sort of thing. But I think that um, in the context of where we're talking about our faith and in this case, the Christian faith, I believe that God is very strategic, and there is a plan and there is a purpose, and that there is that, we sometimes want to step outside of that plan or that purpose. And
Mhm.
then what happens when we're not aligned? We end
Right.
up hurt,
Yes.
crushed, messed up, you
Mhm.
know. But that's just my take. That's just my how I see it.
Well, I think it's like when someone creates something, if you're the creator of something, then you would know the purpose behind it,
Right,
rather than we're trying to figure it out and make it, try to put our stamp on it, what our meaning is. We're not going to get around it. And I think I look at it as with sex and faith, some people may even, they even say, most people will say Jesus, if they whether believe in him, whether being the son of God or not, but even being a prophet, that Jesus was someone to follow, except for sometimes we don't represent him well. But it's like, so I'm saying that to say that um when you see someone who does not know the Lord, and there's like, well, if I do this, there's all this restriction. I can't have sex with my boyfriend or my girlfriend. I can't do this. I can't do that because of how it just we relate restriction to Christianity. And
hmm,
but the reason, it's like the reason behind, it's like when your parent tells you, the simple thing, don't touch the stove. It's not like, I don't want you to have fun, so don't touch the stove. It
right,
is, you will get burned and you can really have severe damage if you don't. But if
right,
the child does not see it and understand that part, because they don't know much about the stove, they're just seeing something looking shiny and bright or whatever, and things, smoke and all kinds of things happen from, they want to touch it. And then but they're thinking mommy is and daddy are keeping me from wanting to have fun. So what do? They don't listen. They go and touch it till they get burned. And I feel this way when it comes to sex and faith. It's not that God is restricting, but it's about relationship. And what it is not just the physical part of it, it's
right,
spiritual, and it's an emotional connection. And it's like, when if we can look back at our first time or our experiences, because I didn't wait till I was married.
right,
And so what I was looking for, the experience in my heart I was looking for, did not happen outside of my
right,
faith and outside of the the marriage, that connection, that spiritual covenant is something about it that takes it to a whole nother
whole
level.
nother level, girl.
No one can experience. It will pacify. I've heard this, because John used to say,
Yeah,
it will
say it.
pacify you, but you will not be satisfied. It will, and so when you're pacified, you have to keep going for more and more to try to figure out, feel something
What it
that
is.
if
Yep.
you go to the Father to learn what it is, you will experience it unlike you ever have before. There is absolutely no comparison. It's like
Yeah.
telling a woman who's never had a child about childbirth and thinking they really will understand what it's like to love a child until you experience it from your own womb. It's a total different thing babysitting a child and or giving birth to one. totally different.
Right, right. And so that also makes me think too that you should not, and I'm talking to some of our young women too, don't rush into a relationship simply because you want to get to that part.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Um, because that's just going to open you up to a whole lot of drama and trauma. um because like you said, there is that spiritual part, that part, because intimacy is more than just being physical.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. That's one part of it, but you experience it all at a whole nother level. And when I look at some of these celebrities, the Cardi B's and the different ones that are really in their own Lizzo, all these ones that are saying or trying to express their sexual freedom and that their strength and their power, but at
Then
the
they're
same
still
time
empty.
they're struggling. Yes, and it's like, okay, so I ask, what how is that how is that working for you? But then you portray an image and these young girls will think that's what you do, but then that is a posture of being conquered but not protected. And we want to we want to stay and keep our power. We don't want to give our power away, and sometimes that is because that then you're pining for this person. So when you're pining and you're hurt, then who has the power then?
Right.
Who has
That's
been
right.
given the power? So yeah, so um, I'm I'm hoping that some of you that are listening don't please jump in and let's get real with it. It's something that we struggle with discussing, and I think it's so important that even afterwards, if someone listens and pulls it up, that they can, it will give food for thought to say, okay, this is something I need to talk about. Yeah, this is how I feel, or yeah, that's a question that I've had.
Right.
Um so uh so let's say, oh, Renee, now this is a great friend and a wonderful, powerful woman of
Oh
God,
yeah,
the
listen to
intercessor
that.
for her. Yeah, many say they are Christians, but do not believe the whole counsel of God. That is true. That is true, Renee. Yes.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
you want to jump in, Renee? Come on in and share and expound, because Renee actually has a podcast as well, getting straight to the heart issues. So we like to bless and encourage our sisters who are out there, really making a difference and having a space for people
Right.
to heal. So um, this is this is really important. So
Yeah.
let's go back to that with this with the young with young people and what we have. What is our response? What could be our responsibility?
And you know what I'm sorry, I'm going to take you back again because I was thinking about
Uh-huh.
what our conversation before, when you were talking about the stove and the child. And remember, we were talking about the whole thing with Sleeping Beauty
Yes.
and the spindles, putting the spindles all away and locking them, the parents locking it away and saying, look, no, you can't touch these, you can't sew on the spindles. And then
Mm-hmm.
what happened? That only sparks the curiosity
Mm-hmm. Sparks it with no knowledge, with no
with no
understanding.
knowledge. And what does the word say? What happens when we lack
Mm-hmm.
knowledge?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People
We
perish
perish.
for a lack
We
of
perish, you all.
knowledge. Lord have
We
mercy.
perish, and the thing about it that symbolized, because it's like, this is what we do, this is how it is with the church, and I love the church, I love the body, but there are areas that we can do so much better. And the fact that with Sleeping Beauty, the father knew what Maleficent was doing, putting this curse on her, that if she was to touch it, she would die. And of course, the godmothers, or the little fairy godmothers, they changed it for her to go to sleep. But the father, instead of educating her and saying, this is what you don't do, this is what's going on, this is why you can't touch the spindle, because of blah blah blah, this is what happened, this was a curse on you, he just hit him. he hid it, and that's what we do as about as
Right. We
a lot of times
hide.
we hide, we don't talk about it, or we're like, we'll talk about it, but it's like it's so it's actually
It's
I sometimes
generic.
chuckle.
It's very
It is
generic.
so yes.
It's surface level. It doesn't really hit certain major points, and then we get upset and say that the public school system is corrupting our kids and teaching them. But well, we're not doing what we need to do. We're not taking hold of our responsibility, and or we try to okay, we're gonna have a purity ring ceremony and we just leave it at that. Okay, come in, put the little ring on your teenage daughter's finger, and then that's it, and then say okay, and
And
now
then
don't do this until you
right.
get married. But we don't have those deep meaningful conversations that need to happen and helping our children, our
Mm-hmm.
teenagers or what have
Mm-hmm.
you understand,
Yeah.
so that they aren't tempted
Yeah.
by the world, and what the world presents to them,
And it's the truth in that what, and not it's not just what, it's like the whys, and
right.
really let it hit home, because they're having conversations, they're talking about oral sex, they're talking about masturbation,
Oh
they're
yeah,
talking about all
all the
this stuff.
stuff.
They're talking about it, but then we
But and
parents
look,
live
look, 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 look. You know what else is happening? They leaving service and going
yeah, they
across the street, or they going
mhm.
down in a basement or in a classroom or somewhere.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
know this for fact.
yeah.
I used to
I
be a
mhm,
youth pastor with my husband,
mm.
and yeah.
Ooh,
What does Renee say? She was in a Facebook group where that women of all ages struggling with this. One coming, suffering with low self-esteem, and when the relationship failed, they cried to God, begging for the relationship to be repaired. And their
mm,
brokenness, they blamed God for the failure
mm.
of the relationship.
Wow.
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 Yeah.
That is even heartbreaking just to hear that. And we take on because that's what we do. We'll take on that we failed, or I could have. And then what do we do? Because you see it in the shows, that then we'll try to seduce all the more. But when we do that, we're setting ourselves to be conquered,
Yeah.
not protected. And we want those men to protect us, not to
To
conquer us. Because
conquer.
once they
Yeah.
do,
Oh,
we
you
can,
gotta speak on that.
you know,
Conquered versus protected.
protected.
Yes.
It's like there's a total different thing. And a lot of times it's like where these the posture that we take, it almost seems like that is attractive to a God, but it's like, but he's built to be, they're built to be warriors and conquerors and kings. And so it's in them to be that. So if we're coming in to try to dominate, that's their way of surrendering, but then put you at a place where where you can be subdued at times. And then we're wanting to be wifey, and then they're moving on to the next thing, and we're left feeling that there's something wrong with us. And it's not, it's something wrong with how we value and how we feel what power is.
Right.
And I think about Lisa Bevere, that Kiss the Girls book. That's a powerful book about that, because she tells her own story. And I remember, on another note, when I was growing up, my mother, was, of course, old fashioned. So there were little things that I would ask, Mom, if you're listening, you probably don't remember, but this is what you did. So, but I would say, Mom, I'm hearing about, douching back in the day. Now you don't, they don't recommend that you do that. But it's
right.
like, Mom, I heard about douching, and she would say, I don't know why a virgin would even want to know about that. I mean, unless you're trying to tell me something. I mean, what became this drama, and I'm like rolling my eyes, like, I'm just asking about douching because you didn't tell me about it, so I'm just hearing about it. I want to ask the question. I'm going to my mom, or about tampons because I was a gymnast. I don't want to wear those big old thick pants.
So then everything becomes sexualized.
Everything is like, why would a virgin want to wear a tampon? I mean, and that her hand on her chest. why would a virgin want to know that?
And it becomes sexualized in a
and it's like,
distorted way.
yes. And it's like, if that's what it is, then talk to me. Then talk to me about it. But
Right.
there was never ever a discussion. And but I wanted to have my daughters, if they ask, my oldest asked some crazy questions when she was in grade school, because what she heard from little kids.
Right.
And it was like, after I, the person in my head fainted and came back and answered the question, I felt like, oh my gosh, but I play it cool. Because I just couldn't believe that at such young ages people are talking about it. And but there is that struggle, as Renee was even talking about, women of faith going through this with other relationships. And then it's like, as a single woman, what do you do when it's been awakened? When you've been awakened, where is there a place that we can really be ministered to? And there's some, and what does God say to those that say, I'm not waiting, I'm gonna still have sex because I like it? And you're not going to change anyone who likes something and don't want to change it because they like it. You're not going to be able to. You're going to have to intercede hard for someone like that. So what should there be a place? What would be the best place or the best scenario? Anyone out there, ladies, that would, for women, for people who have been awakened and then they're gonna wait for their husband. What is that? What does that look like?
Yeah, fill us in, guys. What are your thoughts on that? It's such a difficult, complex subject. It really is.
It is.
It really, I mean, and it's something to really think about and ponder. But I think that too, a lot has to do with, when we talk about this whole element of self-esteem too, it's about getting to the root of why we feel so depleted. Why do we see ourselves as unworthy, or that the relationship is the thing that either makes us or breaks us? Like, getting to the root of that, and doing the work necessary to heal in that area, so that when we do find ourselves in a committed married relationship, or in a committed relationship, that we are able to handle better the ups and downs and the ins and outs, and not feel as though, like, Renee said, like you just, and you're mad at God and you're mad at whoever in the world because the relationship didn't work or whatever, that you don't find yourself back in that same place again and repeating those same patterns. I know a lot of women who were hurt in their childhood, and that baggage is still with them now, and it impacts their relationships, and they find themselves going through relationships, like they say, what you go through men like underwear or whatever, I don't know that little saying, but they find themselves going through relationships, and it's repeated. Certain patterns are repeated over and over and over, and that's because they have not healed from that trauma from their childhood, trauma that they were not responsible for. You're not responsible, ladies, for when, if you were molested as a child, or you were raped, or you were used, or whatever the case is. You are not responsible for that. But what you are responsible for as an adult is just how you heal from that trauma, so that you don't continue to to continue those same patterns. What does Renee say here? It starts with the heart. Yeah. Women are the sum total of the first man that ever loved them, touched them. I think one thing to consider is to make sure women are whole We attract where we, yeah, and that's what I'm saying. That's exactly, you got it, Renee. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I see this all the time. I see the things that they have not healed from, and yet they continue, the pattern continues to repeat itself. And then they keep wondering why is this happening? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you got to go back and you got to heal from that mess that you grew up in, and it
Yeah.
ain't your fault. You
No.
know, if your mama was a narcissist and your daddy was passive, or your granddaddy touched you and all that, that's not your fault. But you got to heal from that, because if you don't, then those patterns continue
Yeah.
to follow. Yep. So it is definitely a
Yeah.
heart issue. I remember we were pastoring some youth. This is back in the 90s.
Uh-huh.
And my husband and I remember some of the older church saints, the older ladies, was like, yeah, y'all need to get on them about being promiscuous, this promiscuous behavior, and they out here and before they had always heard like sermons, beating them down about promiscuity and all that kind of stuff, and I was just like, you know, after really getting to know them and their story,
Mm-hmm.
because it's also for women, it's about building those relationships,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but I'm like, well, that behavior is just a manifestation of something deeper, because like y'all don't know, some of these girls have been raped and mishandled and abused and misused, and so the behavior that you see is just, I always call it the God hole, looking for some kind of, fulfillment,
Yeah.
so yeah, healing from those past traumas is so key. It's so important.
Yep, it's that introduction to it. It could be even, I was sexually assaulted when I was 20. And um so and it as I was I've heard this term, it even being basically being hot wired. It ended up my view, I knew that God created it to be good, but my view was, it just, my pain overshadowed everything, and it made it
Mm,
difficult. It made it very difficult, and even in my marriage, where my husband was feeling like, man, I'm not, why do I have to feel like I'm violating you, and it's like, but because of me going through that experience, and it would just pop up, it took a lot of healing. And I will say, um, I got discouraged from some counsel that I received, and
oh wow.
that I felt trapped. And I know that some people may feel that same way. That we went and did the counseling to get, and they just said, they put it on me and said that you need to figure it out. You give, he's not asking anything unreasonable. You need to just do it. It's just like, that's just what it was. And I was like, this cannot be God. This cannot be, Lord, this is not what you intend. I should not be in pain like
Right.
this, emotional pain like this. And so it's like that, whether it's the introduction or the experience along the way, that there where there will be healing, so that we don't miss out on what is lovely and what is good that God has created. And we're not going to fully come into that until we go to him and really be open to allow him to show us. And some, as a matter of fact, this is how it is too, when it comes to faith and the struggle with faith in sex. There was a woman when my husband and I were pastoring in Oregon, and she said, is my husband and I, when we do this, is my husband and I fornicating? She, because it wasn't like, this was just exploring, just sex, not doing nothing crazy at all, but just anything outside of the typical position. If
They
they
thought it
appeared
was
outside,
fun.
she asked me, was that fornicating? And I said, wow, that opened my eyes to be like, so what do you think, that we have to just be,
Missionary.
there's only one position in the faith, and outside of that, you're fornicating. What?
Hey, that
What?
reminds me of a movie I saw once. It's on Netflix. I think it's called Unorthodox, and it's about the Orthodox Jewish faith. I don't know what sect or whatever, and because the women they cut their hair and they have to wear
Mm-hmm.
wigs and all this kind of stuff. And so and many of the marriages are arranged marriages and that sort of thing. And the woman, on her wedding night, whatever, she had to wear, every time she went to bed, she wore a flannel nightgown, and he wore some kind of covering pajamas or whatever. And it was just like, and she was just laying there, and he just it reminded me of The Color Purple, you know, Mr. Get on top of me and do his business, and then that's it, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it was all about just trying to get pregnant, and she needed to get pregnant and have a male heir and all of that kind of stuff. But that just made me think of that, because like I said earlier, it's not just necessarily Christians who have that kind of thought process, but there are other
Mm-hmm.
faiths that
Other
see it
religions, that
like the
religious.
same way. And I'm just like,
Mm-hmm.
no, I know that Song of Solomon is all in the Bible, and it gets all about your navel is the pool of quench my thirst, and your thighs are like the
Yeah.
rubies, and your breasts are this. And I know too the bigger picture about it being like Christ and the church and all of that. But I see that as too, sex being created as one of the highest forms of intimacy, you know,
Mm-hmm.
between two people, between, in particularly in regard to Christian faith, as we say, the man and a woman. But yeah, you know. Um,
So do you think though, as in the church, should we, when it comes to faith and sex, that sexual immorality should be, or other sins should also be addressed, that so it doesn't seem like sex, but we don't talk enough about lying and quarreling and all these other things that Peter had approached the church about what
right.
was going. Now the top of it was sexual immorality, but it doesn't mean that God is putting that on the top, or oh, I put lying over this, or I put, it's like sometimes we'll put levels on sin
And
rather.
you know what I think too, Dawn?
Mhm.
I think too, we we need to talk about. I'm just going back to what you said about sexual immorality. Okay, then define that. What
Yes.
specifically is that? What are we talking about when you're talking about that? Are we just talking about um, fornication, sex outside of marriage? What do we mean by that? You know, let's address that specifically. Let's talk about um, um, not we do talk about adultery, but let's talk more about that. Let's talk about um, rape. You know, let's talk about um, child molestation. Let's talk about those kind of things that I consider to be distorted or immoral. You know,
Yes.
let's talk about exploitation of children and women. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, and other things that foster other acts, sexual acts that foster violence, or that see another human being as simply an object. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk specifically about those things. I mean, you know, we live in this patriarch society in which, you know, what the man says goes and all that kind of stuff. But no, let's talk more about some of the things, the behaviors that really do um, identify as being immoral. But yeah,
Yeah.
that, and going back to what you're saying too, I think emphasis does need to be placed on those other things as
Yes.
well. You know,
And not
those other
just
sins.
And only just because it's something that we're dealing with, and like you said, as you're talking about there's sex trafficking, it's just everywhere.
Right.
But so for people to heal, and there's so many women out there, and there's a lot of men out there too that are hurt. Men sometimes are even hurt. I feel for them because I feel like they are pressured in having to perform,
Yeah.
that they have to be. So when you hear a man who's abstaining, you're like, what? Oh, he must be gay. Or
Right.
it's like it's something wrong with him, something wrong with him.
Right.
Because why would he, when it's just that he's one that's just going to stand and firm on his beliefs. And so it's like, if I would love to see a safe place to have discussions for healing, and restoring and the trust in what God created, that go to him. It's like when you're complaining about something, you don't want to talk to the customer service rep. You want to go to the one who's making the decisions.
Right.
It's like, go to the Lord. Find out what he says, find out truths, not what people are saying, not interpretations of things from a religious mindset, because religion does not bring life to anything. Religion crucified Jesus, okay?
Right.
So it's like that.
That's right.
He did. And so it's like, what does he say? And so that you can come from an informed place to live a life that is free. Sexual freedom does exist in the body of Christ.
Yes.
Faith and sexual freedom but what does it look like? And not to feel condemned, but to be educated and to learn and to tear down these sacred cows and all these mindsets that people may have talked about, to where only thing that you can do, because that's why I didn't go back. My sister was trying to get me to go to church, and I was like, no, thank you. She'll come over, Dawn, we're going to church. I said, ooh, look at the time, and I would leave out the door because I was like, I am not ready. And I said, well, when I'm really old and I can't do anything, then I'll come to church. And but it was like, no, because one of the things is like, sex. I don't want to be feeling like, I'm guilty and God's about to strike me down, and I'm gonna I may roll over, after having sex with someone, and all of a sudden I'm struck, or the rapture happened, I'm left behind.
You still laid up in the bed.
So
on your back.
But if it's like, if that healing in my life took place, and that I would have a healthy perspective to know what my power is,
Yeah.
and to not to release my power.
That's right.
There would be my approach then would have been
totally different. Yeah.
Totally different. So that, and then if that's the case in my experience, leading up to marriage, my marriage would have been way different. I didn't have to learn later. So yes. So this has been a great discussion with the both of us.
Yeah. Can I say something real quick before we go?
Yeah.
Too, because there was a survey that I found too, called Better Sex Through Faith. And it was a study that was done, and it links faith with sexual satisfaction, which I was like, okay. The results of the study were published online by the Review of Religious Research. And in this study, overall, what they concluded was that people of faith are satisfied with their sex lives. Now, I don't know who the people of faith that they were talking to, but I believe that this had to be individuals who were most likely healed from past whatever, if there was anything to be healed from, and who just found that freedom in their marriage commitment, which happens, it happens, and they found that freedom of the marriage bed being undefiled, and because I know I got freedom to the point of like, oh, this is just beautiful. That's a whole nother show.
That isn't.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
I
That's a
love it.
whole nother show. We could talk about
We could. Oh,
orgasms and all that great stuff.
yes, and it's something that to be discussed. I mean, the people
Yeah.
with big struggle, folks struggle with other things. I think that I'm hoping that this would just at least spark a conversation. I know some people will probably look at this afterwards and may not feel as comfortable chiming in, but that's what we're trying to stop, is try to break that feeling embarrassed to feeling
Right.
afraid to really share and ask questions. I mean, you can even come as my friend. I have a friend, even if you want to say I have a friend, but it's your, to cover what it is, the question that you have for yourself. This is what is important. So I hope more people, yes, this is a safe place, that more
Yeah.
people will come and hang out in the sunroom, drink you some lemonade. So whatever trials, whatever lemons you were given, you squeeze it and make it some lemonade and join us in the sunroom.
That's
That,
right. Come
yes,
join us. We appreciate you all so much. And
yes.
please know that you can find us on any of those podcast platforms such as
Mm-hmm.
Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Amazon Podcasts, and you can also like us on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And you can always catch us live here on Facebook or on YouTube. We
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you all so very, very, very much. Please like us, give us your comments, give us your feedback.
Yes, love it.
Any other topics that you feel are relevant that you'd like to
Mm-hmm.
see us discuss, we are so open for that. We look forward to hearing from you, and we're looking forward to next time. So, in the meantime, you better shine,
Yes, through the shade. Let's shine, ladies. Let's shine. Shine, shine, shine.
shine, 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 shine.